Started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us for this virtual conference. Of course, we wanted to be with you in person. This conference today is a true collaboration with Candace Black from the Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages. We're going to hear from her in a minute. Glad you're here. And she's actually in New York City with Bill and Joanne here presenting for us virtually. So thanks for this. And a true collaboration with Marisol Manriquez-Wiener from the Office of Equity and Access. We'll hear from her in a little bit. And I'm Jill Schimmel, and thank you for being here for this. So we have a few quick slides to orient you to the day. Again, we want to thank Simon Baruch Middle School. We did a lot of work with them to plan for an in-person conference, for breakfast, for having all the rooms ready for you. And so thank you for that team. And we're glad you're here. So we know about the revised standards. You've seen this slide many times. Will be coming throughout our day. Absolute student-centered, promoting all of these ideas. And so Candy, do you want to tell us a little more about the new standards?
Absolutely. Are we going to start the slideshow?
Oh, I am not sharing my screen. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry. I thought I was sharing my screen. Yes.
All right. Awesome.
Welcome for being, sorry. Thank you to everyone. Here we are. Here are the new standards, and Candy's going to tell us more. Sorry about that.
No, not at all. All right. Thank you, everyone. So as I'm sure you've seen those standards before with our 2 anchor standards and the 5 standards within that, we want to remind you of the implementation schedule. It has not changed since you last saw this. We adopted the standards in March of 2021. We changed our name formally to World Languages in July of the same year, and now we're in this yellow period of transition. If you are a 7th grade world language teacher, then this September, you will implement the revised standards. By the same token, if your school is lucky enough to have an elementary program in world languages, you will also begin in whatever grade you first offer those. And then as you see from year to year, we will add 1 grade each year until September of 2028, when everyone will be learning the revised standards. Next slide, please. This is our website, just so you know when you get there. There are 2 important links for you to consider. One is our professional learning link. This has all of our upcoming webinars as well as our recorded webinars. It also has our in-person workshops. In addition to that, we have a standards and guidelines link, and that's where you're going to find all of the documents that we have developed to support you in the transition to these standards. Next slide, please. We want to tell you about 2 very important upcoming professional learning opportunities. The first is our webinar entitled Discover Authentic Resource Gems in the World Language Wakelet. Now, this was originally scheduled for this afternoon, June 8th, but due to an unforeseen circumstance not related to what has caused us to go virtual, we have altered that date. So that will be next Thursday, a week from today on June 15th, same time, 4 to 5 p.m., and it's still virtual. So please consider registering on our website. We also want to let you know that just like last summer, we will be offering a summer unit design workshop. These are in person, they're 2-day, they're free, and they will, although focus on checkpoint B in terms of the examples, the concepts are really applicable to all checkpoints. So if you're a checkpoint A or checkpoint C teacher, you are welcome to attend. You'll get 9 hours of CTLE credit, and you can access the registration form right from our website under professional learning. I put 3 possible venues for you because one might be better than the other. So you can see in the general area, we have Hudson Valley, Long Island, and New York City, right here in the Bronx at the Fordham University campus. So please consider coming. Next slide, please. For my last slide today, I want to remind you that we have 2 upcoming book studies in the 2023-2024 world or academic year. The first one is going to be a statewide book study by region on higher language teaching practices, volume 1. The registration will be live by the 15th of this month. If you sign up and we have 150 slots, so there's plenty of room for everybody who wants to participate in this. You'll get a free book. There'll be monthly Zoom meetings after school for about an hour and a half. You'll get CTLE credit not only for the meetings that you attend, but you also get double the credit because we realize you need time to be able to read the book. So please look for that on our website. And then registration is now available for our second book study. This is different. This is a facilitator book study, so it's a lot smaller in nature. So we take about 50 people only. We make sure that they are spread out among the 7 regions of New York. And these are people who are interested, after participating in the book study, to become facilitators in their region. Now, it's not a commitment that you have to become a facilitator, but it's for people who might be interested in doing so the following school year. We have a very exciting opportunity with this. The book is The Keys to Strategies for Language Instruction. And the 2 co-facilitators are one of the authors of the book, Leslie Braun, you may know her name, as well as the illustrious Bill Heller, who is offering a session later today during this conference. By the same token, you will have a free book. You'll get monthly Zoom meetings for about an hour and a half after school, and you'll get CTLE credit for all of that. I hope you consider joining us for this, and the registration is now available on our professional learning page. Jill, that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Candy. And thank you all for messaging hello to everyone else. We did disable the chat for now. We are going to use the chat to send you links. We'll again put the link to the program right now. And yes, we do have the Q&A feature open, so we see a few questions there. So we'll come back to that later. So the focus of today is really the high leverage teaching practices, which you may have heard of as the core practices or HLTPs. And so exactly what Candy mentioned, those book studies and the book Enacting the Work of Language Instruction. This is really important instructional practices that are not learnable just through watching a video, something like that. They're very complex. So the workshops and the program we have today really give you concrete examples of that practice and what it might look like in your classroom. They do need to be deconstructed and explicitly taught. That's why these book studies are so valuable. And they can be something you rehearse and coach, right? It's more than just very best practice. This is what we should do, but it's really kind of the multiple layers of it. And so how many of you, well, I won't ask you to raise your virtual hands or in-person hands, but if you were with us on January 30th at Stuyvesant High School, we introduced this instructional practices tool. And please know that this tool has the core practices embedded in it, and that will be in the folder for you. These slides, everything will be available in the folder for you. After we have today, we will send a follow-up email with all resources. And so again, this is another representation of the core practices. And you'll see links during remote teaching. We did make a short, like up to 30-minute webinar on each of the core practices, what it is, why it's important, and how you can bring it to life. So today we have an abbreviated program with digging into 4 of these core practices today. So I'm in the Division of Multilingual Learners, and we are so proud. We have almost 90 schools offering the seal of biliteracy this year. I'm in touch with Candy every single day, and we hope that all of you as language teachers, whether you teach at elementary, middle, or high school, that you see your students and help them see themselves as future ambassadors, future AP language students, future IB students. And certainly we want them all to graduate with the New York State Seal of Biliteracy. So you can contact me for more information on that. And we are expanding Spanish for Heritage Speakers courses. We have 6 schools on board to start that in the fall, and we're planning to expand that more in future years. And all these partnerships, so we make sure that the policy documents really align to classroom instruction. That is a big piece. And we're trying to give all your students options for world languages. Maybe it's virtual learning classrooms for an AP French class that you couldn't offer in person. So all of that, you know where to contact me. And we have professional learning over the summer, including for school leaders. So we're trying to go quickly, and I wanted to introduce Marisol Manriquez-Wiener.
Hi, everyone. Jill, can you hear me well? So thank you, everyone, for being here. We are so excited. So, okay, so thank you so much, Jill. So let me tell you about an initiative that we start at the beginning with the Office of Equity and Access and Teacher Career Pathway. An initiative to develop citywide virtual lab classroom to support culturally relevant and sustaining professional learning and pedagogy. We started with AP Spanish language and culture. So what are these lab classrooms? How are they defined? And non-evaluative learning cycles where educators come together virtually to learn and grow from each other, anchored in the New York State CRSC framework. So just to show you, sometimes picture shows more than words. So let's go to the next one. Thank you, Jill. So here are some of the lot of activities we have been doing for 3 years. And we focus in lab classrooms and also professional learning activities after school. And if you go to the next one, we just want to have a 1-minute video clip, like a testimony of what this work was before this year. We are coming very.
To make sure I can share the sound. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rosagni Henao, and I am a Spanish teacher at Stevenson High School. And over the past 2.5 years, I've been very fortunate to partake in the process of learning about CRSC and to work with an amazing team of the Spanish Lab Classroom. And it has been just such an amazing experience. The process itself, learning about how to really draw from our students and the diverse backgrounds and learnings and unique experiences front and center of our instruction has definitely been a gratifying one. And to be able to actually observe my fellow Spanish teachers and see the kind of work that they're doing to really harness and leverage the diversity and the unique knowledges and experiences that students bring from their respective backgrounds has been quite an exciting, uplifting one, as it has really allowed me to see not just great teaching practices, but to see the CRSC protocol in action. Additionally, I have learned a great deal about my own pedagogy. It has really allowed me to reflect on my own biases as a teacher.
And so this was Spanish for the first year, Spanish AP, but this year it was amazing because I'm waiting.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rosani.
Thank you, Rosani. So this year was amazing because we did an expansion to include checkpoint 8 examples for French, Mandarin, and Spanish in partnership with, thank you, Jill, the Division of Multilingual Learners. And a lot of the focus in the professional learning this year was anti-racist pedagogy. And the next point. And also we pilot this this year in French, Mandarin, and Spanish in 2 schools. Here we will see a little picture of some of the lab classroom that we had. It was an amazing year, but next year is going to be even better. Next slide and less, because looking ahead, we are going to implement citywide lab classroom for French, Italian, hopefully in the future, all the languages, Mandarin and Spanish from October to April. And the focus this year will be clear focus in CRC practices embedded in the lesson plans, also classroom instruction, and classroom video showing the core practices. And of course, all of you are invited and will receive the invitation. And thank you again, Jill, for the amazing partnership of this year and the future.
Thank you, Marisol. Thank you. So we wanted to, before we hear from Jessica Haxhi, who's coming in, zooming in from New Haven or Connecticut, we wanted to introduce you to our Padlet. So on January 30th, if you were there, we had one. We have one set up for today. And so I will click on it. You can open up this QR code here, and we'll put the link in the chat as well. And throughout the day, please do put your ideas. So we're going to hear from Jessica, her keynote titled A New Elephant. So after the keynote, we'll give you a few minutes to type your ideas, your reflections, your thoughts And then during your workshops, we have 4 workshop options. Please do share your ideas and commitments. And then over the day, we'll see from your colleagues. You weren't able to attend session B. What did your colleagues think? And then this 6th one, this last one, your voice matters. Your voice does matter. And Candace and Marisol and I really work for you. And so we really want to hear your ideas. What did this make you think about today? What support might you need? So all of that's there. So we encourage you to continue. And Marisol is so kind as to have copies of the Anti-Racist World Language Classroom, and we were going to raffle them off in person. We had all these things for in person today, but if you respond on the Padlet, and some come up as anonymous, so please do make sure your name comes through. We will then do a raffle. I think she has 10 copies of the text. So please do share your ideas, and we're really excited about that. So we'd like to introduce Jessica and her keynote. The description is here, and some of you may have seen her at the NECTFL conference here in New York City. We're so happy to have her really thinking about what this means for New York City. How do we think thematically? It's more than just those discrete topics, as Candy has always said. So Jessica, do you want to take it away? I'll stop sharing.
Sure. Buenos dias. Bonjour. Marhaba. Ni hao. Buongiorno. Ohayo gozaimasu. I'm so happy to be with all of you. Jill is so great. She says my last name in Albanian the way it's probably supposed to be said, because she and I both happen to be married to Albanians, would you believe? And we both speak Japanese. So we have a number of connections, even though we're both a couple of girls who grew up in the US, right? So it's an amazing connection we have that we discovered little by little. So today I'm so excited to be with you online, but I have to admit I was really, really excited to come be with you in person and get all that energy from you. But we'll do the best we can, right? And your amazing organizers have pulled this together so quickly. You're probably wondering why we're talking about elephants and New York City. I promise it's not because I'm a Republican. So, but I also promise you that there's a method to my madness. And those of you who know me know that I love metaphors. So today, I first want to just find out, how are you feeling? And actually, I wouldn't mind the chat being
okay.
What is it? Enabled? Because I don't mind, I can kind of check it there. It was going to be so fun to just walk around and hear what you were saying right now. I had fun finding these memes online, but I know we have we get out on June 15th, but basically exams are done for the high school teachers. The middle school and elementary school teachers are just scraping by till that last day, and we are exhausted. When do y'all get out? Jill, I'm not sure.
June 26th, kana.
Oh goodness.
26, 28. Yeah.
Oh wow. So they
know the date. They're counting.
We finally got rid of our February break this year, so we got a little bit early in New Haven. So feel free to put in the chat how you're feeling. Grounded. Oh, I'm glad. Good. That makes me happy. So take a moment to just breathe. Let's take 10 seconds to just breathe, because I know that even virtual, it's a lot to get in front of a computer. I'll admit to you, I'm wearing my yoga pants because you know what? That was the best part of the pandemic. So let's take a minute. All right. So I'm going to tell you the crazy reason why we're talking about elephants today. There's about 3 different reasons, but one is that I do love elephants. My grandmother collected them when I was little, and these are some of the elephants that I used to take and play with. So the one on the right is actually like worn out because I loved that one and I used to play with it all the time. And for years, I've been trying to think about how I could work elephants into a presentation, because I've worked all kinds of other metaphors in. I've got my elephant necklace on today that I was going to show all of you that I just got. So that's one of the reasons we're talking about elephants, and I'll tell you the others in a minute. So I supervise about 90 teachers in New Haven, Connecticut. We're luckily a very progressive district when it comes to world languages. We have 8 languages: Arabic ASL, Chinese, Japanese, Italian, Latin, French, and Spanish. And we mostly start in middle school with our kids, and we do luckily have some elementary school programs too. Before I came to New Haven 10 years ago, I taught Japanese for 20 years in Waterbury Public Schools in Connecticut in a K-5 program. And this year, I missed the classroom and I missed the kids. So this past year, I taught high school Japanese 1 just to seniors and juniors who didn't need 2 years of a language. So it was really just the best part of my day. I would go see them first period and then go do the rest of my job. And it was just wonderful. And I loved getting back to them. So I'm curious how long you've been teaching. We're going to continue them, and not that you're elephants, right? But there's elephants of all ages. So if you could put in the chat, like, are you a less than 10-year person? Are you an 11 to 12 year? Are you mid-career, or are you 20 plus years and you've got a lot of experience? So I'm going to try to zoom through the chat here and see some of your answers. Let's see, peaceful. Okay, let's see, less than 10 years, 20 plus, yay. All right, 20, Brandon's got 20. Let's see, 20 plus, Shivani Singh, great. All right, and a lot of less than 10, good for you. Finishing year 10, congratulations, Jason. 20 plus, Jasenia, wow. All right, great. So we have a wide range. That makes me really happy because it gives us a lot of experience to pull from today. Sarah's got 18. You're almost to 20 there. 20 plus, Ava, wow. All right, so we really do have a wide range. That's wonderful. And that shows me that those of you who have been here 20 plus, you are really in it. Right? You've seen all the major changes in the field. I know I have. Down on the bottom here, I just want you to note this elephantvoices.org is a really beautiful organization that promotes inspiring wonder in the intelligence, complexity, and voices of elephants to secure a kinder future for them. So if you want to check out more about supporting elephants in the world, you could check them out. So I want you to pause for a second now and just think, like, why did I ever start this crazy profession? Like, what was it? Why did I start? Why did I believe that languages should be learned? Why did I believe that languages should be taught? So if you've got a piece of paper there, or if you just want to sit and think, I'm going to give you a couple seconds to really ground yourself in that memory, like elephants. And feel free to put some answers in the chat. Oh, Wendy's got gives you an open mind. Thank you, Paula. Alexandra loves words. Nice. New worlds. Yes. 7 languages at NYC schools. Wow. Go NYC schools. Nice. Oh, I love these. These are beautiful. One thing that's one of my favorite things about our field, about world language teachers, is that most of us are really grounded in how we feel about learning languages. Like, most of us are really doing this with a serious purpose. And I don't know if that's the same in all the other subject areas, but we have a real commitment to teaching languages, the importance of learning languages. And so it's rather easy for us to be advocates in that way. And that's where we get our energy when the days get rough, I believe. I know that's how I feel. Oh, these are beautiful. I'm going to download the chat and read these to make me happy. Wonderful. Thank you. Oh, these are great. Candy, you should be copying these for all of your advocacy brochures. Great. So for those of you that were in it in the 1970s or in school, right, in the 1970s, like me, or the 80s or the 90s, or even the 2000s, let's pause and think about either you were teaching then or you were in school then maybe. What skills did students need to learn then? And what experiences did teachers need to give them? So either you as a teacher, or if you were a student, what experiences did your teachers need to give you? What did they give you as experiences? And what motivated students to learn? Maybe if you were a student, what motivated you? So I want you to think about that for a second. And I also want to say that some of these slides now, but not all, If you were at the Northeast Conference, I did use some of these slides, and Jill gave me permission to reuse some of these slides, but we are going to go a couple different directions here today. So I want you to think about that for a second. Like, what was school like? What did language classes give you? What kind of skills did you need to learn to be successful in a job? I'll just start off by saying, I remember that the only things I thought you could be were like doctor, nurse, police, fire. Remember when we learned the community helpers, and like that was your choices, right? I didn't know anything. Actually, I didn't know anything about like world language teacher or world language supervisor at all. I didn't know this job existed. So I'm just going to open the chat and see if there's any. Oh, memorization. Yes, yes, yes. Ah, the 4 skills. Oh, gosh, I couldn't have planned. I'll send you guys your checks later for putting all the things that I would have wanted you to put in the chat. All right. Very nice. Study skills, study skills. Nice. Nice. All right. So let's take a walk back together in time, shall we? Let's go back in time a little bit so we can really have a good, strong feeling for what it was like. So you might remember, this is what an office looked like in the 1970s. There's Mary Tyler Moore with her typewriter and her telephone and her desk. And this is what a business meeting looked like. Here's President Carter having a meeting. They've got notebooks and pens and coffee, and that's it. And this is what a factory looked like. And there's some guys putting in an engine with their bare hands, with their own hands. And this is how information was shared, right? We had our 3 channels of television for many years, right? This whole cable thing is fairly recent. And we got newspapers and we gossiped. And that was how we shared information. And we wrote letters. Imagine, we wrote letters. And we talked on the phone. Who remembers falling asleep while talking on the phone to your friend, or just hogging the phone all night and your parents were upset in middle school because you were on the phone with your friend all night? And this is how we organized travel. We went to a travel agent. And actually, this is a little bit dated. Back then, she might not have had a headset on, right? Or a computer. And this is how we shared photos. We took photos. We took them to a store to get developed. We had to pick them up. We had to cut them up and put them in photo albums. Wow. Right. And this is how we listened to music. We had cassette players. I should have a record player here, right? We had, who remembers the old Walkman, right? That was a big deal when we could walk around with the music. And this was the core of when you were learning a language, right? You had to have your dictionary ready to look up words. My Japanese dictionary is absolutely dog-eared. And this is what a classroom looked like. All the kids organized, facing forward, raising their hands. And I don't know about you, but I feel like more than kids were really motivated and motivatable by grades, right? You could say, well, you're not going to get a good grade unless you do this. And I know a lot of what I did, maybe it's just because I'm, a lot of us teachers are very grade driven, tried to be good in school, but a lot of what I did was purely grade motivated, not because I was passionate about what we were learning. So that was the class of, say, up until about 2010, right? Up until about 2010, the skills, experiences, and motivation for learning that students had was pretty much driven by the skills you needed to be successful in those environments. So let me see what you've put in the chat here. What are your reactions to what we've talked about so far? Oh, I see we're talking about, oh my God, encyclopedias. I should have had an encyclopedia. This slide, that would have been awesome. Remember? Oh, we all bought encyclopedias and had them in our classrooms. And I don't know about you, but we have old Realidades textbooks in New Haven that still have cassette tapes, and the kids are like, what are those? They don't even know. Right? Oh, the Atlas. Yes, my husband still has one. He marks all the roads that we drive on. Excellent. Right. So that was what they needed, and we were preparing them, or we were being prepared for the world that existed then, right? So how did we teach back then? Or how were you taught back then? Like someone said in the chat, we already kind of had communication divided into 4 separate skills, right? Listening, reading, speaking, and writing. If you were lucky, you had a teacher that did big C culture, right? Like Culture Friday, or they taught you about some of these things, you know, French is baguettes, and in Spain they eat paella, and in China there's a Great Wall and things like that. You kind of knew big C. Mexico had, you know, Dia de los Muertos. Maybe you learned those things. Italian was pasta, you know, sort of big C culture generalizations. And we all had textbooks, right? That you opened the textbook and you turned to a page and you learned about that, I should very clearly say, that language. And maybe these were some of the topics that you learned about. So you might have walked in and the teacher said, okay, today we're learning about chores in the home, or today or maybe your teacher had written on the board, today we're going to learn about subject adjective agreement, right? Do you remember that? I mean, I remember that very clearly. Oh, Maristel's saying yes, 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 right? This looks a lot like what we saw, right? And you know, that was what we knew to be best practices at the time, and that's okay, right? We were figuring out how to learn languages, how to teach languages. And this is probably a lot of what you saw, right? This is right from that Realidades textbook that we had. And I'm not bashing these textbooks. I'm saying this is what we knew at the time. And maybe you had these long, long lists from your teacher that you went home and somehow learned. And if you were a good memorizer, like someone put in the chat, then you were going to be very successful. So now I do have a handout for you, and I would like to show you that I also have 325 of these handouts right here, pre-printed, double-sided, so I cannot even use them for scrap paper. But I've decided I think I'm giving them to the elementary schools because luckily they're blank pictures of elephants. So maybe kids can color them the last week of school. But if you'd like to access the handout and either print it at your house, or you can, I made it so if you add text boxes, you can type on it. It's right here. So I'm going to hold it up here and start talking while you still look at that. And if anyone, maybe Jill, you could type it into the chat for me, that tiny URL. So the first page is an old elephant, right? And on this elephant, where it says past, we're going to try to record what were the things that grounded us in terms of instruction of world languages in the past, right? What was our old elephant? And so what motivated students? What skills did they need to learn? How did we teach? What experiences did we give them? So if you'd like to write on your handout now and record some of those things you just remembered or saw, feel free. Right? It's a little bit more cumbersome, but I'm going to add some things. I wish you could be handwriting right now. So I thought it was quite convenient that we had 4 skills grounding our past instruction, right? Reading, writing, speaking, listening. So those were the legs of the elephant, right? So if you don't feel like writing on this, I'm just going to show you some of the things I wrote. And grammar was basically the body of our elephant, right? It was driving the way we thought about the sequence of what kids needed to learn. If you were lucky, you also had a teacher giving us topic-based units, right? So this was like a, calendar unit or weather unit and things like that. Like someone put in the chat, memorization was at the core of how we believed students need to learn languages, as was translation for many years. We had big C culture kind of bringing up the rear, if you will. I'm here all morning, everyone. We had textbooks at the core of our materials. And what students were hearing was textbook recordings, right? Very convenient. You clicked the recording. We had workbooks were the things that they were writing into. We had vocabulary lists as the thing we were offering them. And we were assessing with quizzes and tests. And that was a pretty nice, neat package of how we taught languages, right? And kids were motivated by grades. And I sort of think they were motivated by approval too. Do you remember when kids would just listen because you walked in and you were the teacher? Like that used to happen, right? I don't really, and it's not the kids' fault. I think it's the fault of everything that they are barraged with social media and everything else in the world to can take their attention, that it requires a lot more to get their approval, engagement, respect, love than it used to. So they're not going to listen to us just because we walk in the door necessarily, and we just have to accept that. So I wanted to pause for a second and tell you another reason I chose elephants. Another thing I was thinking about is that in the world language field, we often act like the blind men and the elephant. And this is just some actual self-reflection because this is me too. So I don't know if you know this parable, but I also linked it in our handout for today, which you'll get later. I have another handout with all the resources I'm discussing. The blind man and the elephant parable is from originally sort of from Buddhist Hindu literature. And it talks about blind men who hear there's something called an elephant in town. So they all go to check it out. But each blind man touches a different part of the elephant. So one man touches the trunk and he says, oh, an elephant is a snake. And another one touches the legs and says, oh, no, it's a tree. And another one touches the back and says, no, it's a brick wall. And another one touches the ear and says, no, it's a carpet. And one touches the tusk and says, no, it's a spear. And I think that for many years, no matter what stage of world language profession we're in, or actually the education profession, it's really easy to get stuck in thinking that what your perception of how languages should be taught is the only way, or what kids should learn. And I get in these holes too, where I'm like, okay, I'm just focusing on Japanese hiragana, and I forget that I need to be doing everything and culture and this. And that's why education is such a challenging profession, and it's such an exciting profession, because the whole elephant means that you really have to be constantly stepping back and thinking, am I really thinking about everything they need to learn and every way I need to come at it in order for students to get the whole elephant? So even here, you know, maybe there were teachers focusing on just reading and writing. Remember those teachers? I had a lot of those. I couldn't say a word of Spanish after I left my Spanish classes, right? Or maybe you had teachers who did a lot of grammar, but not so much speaking and listening, right? So we really have been sort of pieces of the elephant blind men in our field. Not only that, now we need to shift gears and think about this kid. This is the kindergartner coming in to school today, right? Guess when this kid's going to graduate? 2041. It doesn't even sound like, it sounds like a science fiction movie, right? This child is going to graduate in 2041. So what are the skills, experiences, and motivation that this student is going to have? What are the skills they need? We need to teach them. What are the experiences they need to have in our classrooms in order to be proficient at life in 2041? And what is going to be their motivation for learning as they go? So let's now try to think about that in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, right? And the 50s, the 2050s. What are they going to need to learn? What experiences, what must we guide them to? And what will motivate them? So let's spend some time now together in the future. So now this is an office. This is our Mary Tyler Moore of today, right? This is an office, no wires, right? Everything virtual. This is an office. You can be sitting in your backyard. No one telling you what to do when, no one seeing what you're wearing, none of that. And this is a meeting. So there you see a combination of, you see pen and paper still, you see collaboration, but you also see laptops. And this is a meeting where none of us were in the same place, but we were meeting with our legislators in Washington, D.C. And this is a factory. And you have to look really hard to find the people. They're way over here in the top right. And you better believe they're not putting the engine in the car. They're doing something much different than those guys we saw before. And I don't know what this is or why we need it, but they're making them like crazy, right? This is what we're seeing, the future. These things can dance now and talk. And this is how we do all of the things that we saw before. So this is how we listen to music, how we get directions, how we watch television, how we get all of our information, how we write letters to each other, how we share pictures, all of it in this one device that's in our pockets. And this is our dictionary. I hate to say it, but this is our dictionary. This is Kids' Dictionary. And again, this is something I am not 100% clear on what it is or what it does, but it is coming really fast. and it is changing the way kids interact, students interact with teachers, and teachers can create lessons for students. Not only that, we're at a time in history when we desperately need each other to solve world problems. No longer can we be isolated countries or isolated cultures. We've had a pandemic that taught us this. We've had flooding and climate change that taught us this. This is a picture taken in New York City yesterday. So you are all experiencing this. And this is something that happened in Canada, right? We have refugee crises, we have border crises, we have war and war and war always, and the effects of war on humans, on children. At the same time, as a result, actually, we need people who can speak languages, succeed in various cultural contexts, whether even if they're speaking English, they need to be able to succeed in various cultural contexts. And we need folks who are creative, flexible, and imaginative in order to solve these problems in the world today. And we still know from the Making Languages Our Business report, and you can access this in the final handout I'm going to give you, 9 out of 10 employers rely on employees with languages other than English. And 56% say their foreign language demand will increase in the next 5 years. I want to share with you this book really briefly. Even though this book was written a while ago, it's really an interesting way to think about skills. So Daniel Pink wrote about how in the past, the skills that were asked for by employers were the ability to be logical, to sequence things, to produce facts, memorize facts, to do reasoning, and sort of word-based things. And that was very much left brain. Oh, sorry, the font is bad there, but this is left brain, left side of your brain. But now we are moving toward a time when we need the kids to have better creativity, imagination, be able to understand larger world contexts, to have good intuition about things, and obviously the whole world is more picture-based now, because you can show a picture, you can look at a picture and get like Maricel said this morning, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So even then he wrote, we're moving from an economy and a society built on logical, linear, computer-like capabilities of the information age, even from humans, to an economy and a society built on the inventive, empathetic, big picture capabilities of what's rising in its place. So these are some of the skills our students need to have. And just to drive it home a little bit more, these are some popular jobs that have mostly disappeared since 2000. Disappeared. Take a look at that. You don't need these anymore. And these are jobs that LinkedIn says you'll be recruiting for in 2030. I don't know what some of these are, but I'll tell you that I had to look them up. Organ creator is someone who could 3D print an organ to be installed, no, not installed, but implanted in someone's body. Is it installed? Is it implanted actually, right? An augmented reality journey builder is someone who like in one of those Second Life type games would build the journey for someone to go through. Or a metaverse planner, someone building one of these worlds that people can live in. A biofilm is this stuff they've discovered that will make bathrooms and surfaces be antibacterial. And so they're going to try to be installing these, I suppose it's something like putting the thing on your phone, which takes me half an hour to protect the screen, but you have to do a whole bathroom. Fascinating, right? Oh, I have to look at the chat for a second, okay? Right? Really amazing, right? So when you look at this list, are we preparing our students, right, for the skills, experiences, and attitudes they need? So just to pull this back to that whole new mind, some of the things Daniel Pink says is empathy, design capabilities. So he talks about students need to go do MFAs more than MBAs. So instead of business, they need fine arts. They need to know how to tell stories to others in order to get their message across. They need, oops, I'm sorry about that font. They need to understand symphony, how to bring things together and synthesize information. And they need to play so that they can develop these skills. And what they're working on needs to have meaning in order for them to be motivated by it. So let's talk a little bit more about that motivation. What motivates our students today? So maybe take a second and think before I change the slide. Let's see where there's Q&A here that I can answer. I'll just quickly look. Okay, I do see that someone put Google Translate is grossly incorrect. I would say, have you checked it lately? Because I went in and I looked up, I wanted to show you Google Fails. And I went in and I looked up all these websites about Google Fails. Then I went and put them in again, and Google has fixed all the fails. So it is frightening how quickly they are moving. So if you're thinking about what motivates students, yes, I know that this is the number one thing you think of, right? What motivates them is social media, likes, friends. Yes, I agree with you. In a sense, though, we've always been motivated by likes by our friends, right? It's just that we've added this layer where they can have it in their pocket at all times, which is horrifying. But they are also motivated by social justice issues, as we saw, right? They are absolutely motivated by social justice and equality and rights for everyone. And climate change, they are absolutely motivated by climate change and things like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. If you talk to students about these, they absolutely care that there are human rights revolving around these. And therefore, what do they want from language classes now? So have you ever just said to your kids, like, why are you here? What do you want? It's fascinating, isn't it? What I've seen is that the number one thing they always say is to speak. And thank goodness that's the thing they say, because honestly, and I don't mean to scare you guys, but if you really think about Google Translate's capabilities, there's probably nothing you could read or write that won't be quickly translatable in the next 10 years. 10 years from now, I don't think there's any, they can even take a picture of things and it shows the translation now. So the one thing we can still absolutely give them is speaking skills, because reading and writing, they're going to have quick access to translation. Now, will it be, of course you'd still want to read, to write, and all those things. I'm not saying we're not going to teach it, but we need to get real about what they're going to actually need. They want to be able to watch shows. They love shows thanks to Netflix, they love shows from other countries, and we can encourage them to be watching those shows in languages. They still love travel. Everybody still loves travel, right? And travel, there are moments in travel, especially speaking moments, because now you can just hold up your camera and it'll Google Translate signs for you, right? Which I can't believe. Or you can go to Google Maps and it will tell you what train to take in Japan, which just disgusts me, right? Because I had to learn all the characters to take a train in Japan, right? So they're motivated by travel. I see Jill nodding. They're motivated by big life questions, right? They want to figure things out. They want to figure out problems. And they're motivated by being able to talk to their families if they're heritage speakers. So we still have that. And it's speaking focused. So I would propose to you that what we can offer the students of today is what we even must offer the students of today is what I like to call the SBGs. Ha ha ha. Some of us have been talking about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So the SDGs, these are the SBGs, the skills that Google cannot get them to. And one of those things is intermediate, mid, or better. So the other piece about speaking is I really think that anything below intermediate mid is going to be Google translatable. I know you've probably tried that phone app where you can talk into it and it talks back. We use that with families all the time in New Haven that speak other languages. Those kinds of skills with simple novice level speaking is going to be translated for them. But as soon as you get to intermediate mid, when you're talking about nuance and difficult situations you might be in, or intercultural competence in the language, real intercultural competence in the language, all of those things, and spontaneous, quick survival situations, which is all intermediate mid-level stuff, that you can't use Google Translate for. And I don't believe you will be able to for many years. So, and not for nothing, it's the seal of biliteracy too. So we need to be getting kids to intermediate, mid, or better, or intermediate high in New York, right? Sorry, sorry, Connecticut. I'm still in Connecticut mode. Spontaneous communication skills will not be translatable. The understanding of cultural and linguistic nuances, the ability to synthesize thought and language. Nobody can do that but a human in the way I don't care about ChatGPT. No one can do it perfectly like a human. Intercultural competence, which is that ability to take your understanding of how cultures work and do what the Romans do and follow clues and things like that into any other culture. International relevance. I really believe that if you haven't learned other languages and deeply as other cultures, you really are not able to speak on the international stage. Right? If you're monolingual, monocultural, it becomes very difficult for you to exist in an international forum. And that's what we're seeing happen in our country even, right? We could go further with that. We need to give our students creativity and play so that they can learn how to do that, not only for their jobs, but just for themselves, right? We're doing too much work. We need to teach kids how to solve real world problems and give them meaning, give meaning to what they're learning. So I'm going to leave that up there for a second, but I did put this graphic in your final handout I'm giving you. And finally, we just need to teach them the joy, the love of languages and other people that you all have. We need to show them that being able to, even just talk to the guy down at the bodega in their language gives you joy every day. And that you can't get just from whipping out your phone and Google translating it. So now I encourage you to look at the second page of your handout, which is a very blank elephant, giving you lots of space to think about what is communication now, right? What are we going to put as the legs? What is culture? What is going to drive our instruction? What are the themes, topics, and tasks? What are the materials kids need to see? What are, did I miss one? What is the motivation students will have? What are the assessments that are appropriate as we move into the future? And now I want you to think about that for a second, and then we're going to walk through a little bit of what things look like. The handouts will be digital. Anna, maybe we can put that, can someone maybe copy and paste that tiny URL? Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I'll do it.
URL again for some people, but I'll show them all again at the end, okay? All right, so I'm going to let you do what you want to do, maybe type a few notes, and then we're going to roll. I have until 9:45, right, Jill? Just nod, I can see you.
Hi, so
yeah,
des.
Hi, arigato. Okay, now let's walk our elephant into the future. How shall we teach these babies who are going to graduate in 2041 with those crazy jobs that they have to go do, biofilm installer and organ generators and all these things? How do we need to teach them? So one of the answers is your beautiful new World Language Standards for New York State. It's a completely new concept of what communication is. And when the World Readiness Standards, our National World Readiness Standards, shifted to this definition of communication, I forgot something. Hold on, Jessica, put that clip art. Hold on. Wait, okay, you didn't see that. Pretend you didn't see that. I didn't add my clip art. When we switched to this idea of communication, it completely changed the way I thought about how I communicate every day. So if you think of communication as a triangle, right, with your new World Readiness Standards, and all day, every day, you're existing in these three different modes of communication. So you might walk down the street, you might, see a newsstand and read something as a headline. So that's interpretive, right? It's one way coming in. Or you might listen to the daily New York Times podcast on your way into work. And, that's interpretive coming in. You don't have any ability to talk with the author or the person who created the podcast at that moment, right? There's no interpersonal discussion with them. So, but then maybe you get to work and you're at the water cooler or in the teacher's room, and you're like, oh my gosh, did you see that this happened or that happened? And you have a conversation about it with someone at your work. And then maybe later on, you've been thinking about it all day. So this happened the other day because the daily podcast was about Lucy Crockins for me and her reading method and et cetera, and how New York City has changed to the science of reading. And I read it, listened to it on the way in on the daily. Then I talked to my boss about it. And then I emailed the link to it because she told me to my work colleagues, because we made a similar switch, but we all have our Lucy Calkins books right there on our shelves. So that was presentational, because for me, an email is presentational because I carefully write it and I make sure, if I'm sending a work email, it's not going to be just off the cuff, right? So we as humans are constantly doing all these things. And what this makes you think about is, when I'm teaching, am I giving students opportunities to practice all three modes? And when I started keeping track of my grade book by mode, I found that I was doing plenty of practice and assessment in interpretive and presentational. But even though I think, oh, I teach speaking, I wasn't doing enough practice and in assessments along the way, mini formative assessments in interpersonal. So this way of thinking about the way language works really changes your feeling about what communication is. And I really love this definition of it. And so this is what your new definition is in your standards. In addition, you have a new definition of culture. And I took the liberty, I hope you don't mind, Candy, of putting it on triangle too, because I just like triangles. But to me, I think of this, so we think of this as the three C's, the three modes of communication. I think of this as the three P's of culture. So it's the relationship between the products of a culture, like what they use or make, the practices, what they do in that culture, but the why behind it. And we used to teach, when we did Big C, like we were showing before, we were doing products and practices, but we weren't making it to perspectives. And this is really where kids start to understand what culture is, the nature of culture, when they start to think about perspectives. And you can apply this to absolutely anything. So let me see how much time we have. Oh, we do have a few minutes. I would like you to just take a minute to go to this tiny URL. So could someone type that in the chat for me? tinyurl.com/3 capital P S holy. And I don't know if I'm saying it right, but this is an Indian festival and often elephants are featured. So, or you can take a QR code of it here. And we're going to go here. And as you look at that article very quickly, I want you to think about, what are the products of that festival? What are the practices? What do they do? But what's the why behind it? So just practice for a second, thinking like the triangle.
Jessica, is this a National Geographic resource that's behind a paywall? It's behind a paywall, actually.
It is? I don't have it. Oh, here, then I'll show it.
Okay, thanks.
Behind a paywall.
Yeah.
What are you kidding? That's weird, because I was able to see it before. Hold on. Oh, that's too bad. How come I could see it before? Wait a minute. Hold on.
Okay.
Let me go a different way. That's so strange. I was just reading it this morning. Okay, we'll do a different one. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Ready? Where's the chat? Okay, we'll do a different one. This one is not behind a paywall. So you can take a look at this. And this will work just as well. I'll go back to my slides.
And we have quite a question in the chat, Jessica, if you don't mind, about burning question for Maria about thinking when we only see students a few times a week, and they have the stress of getting students ready for exams and everything. How do we take time to really engage with the 3 Ps, for example?
So to me, I'm going to let people read that article and then I'll answer it. or, I'm going to let you skim it, I should say. And Maria, just put in the chat what grade you're talking about, and when did those kids start language learning, is what I want to know. Oh, middle. I'm sorry, you put middle. Okay, I'll answer. So do me a favor, let's just take a second. What are some of the products of this festival? It's real easy. They're quick to see, I'm sure. Colors, right. So the practices are this a powder, right? They throw this colored powder, right? So that would be a product. So if you were teaching, right, maybe Hindi, you would have some day probably where like the Color Me Rad race, you would take the kids outside with some colored flour and throw it on the kids, right? To have them practice it, right? People gathering together, right? Different kinds of, it seems like there's dancing, right? Bright colors, shapes, connecting with others. Okay. As you read further, what are the perspectives? Why? Why are they doing this? They just enjoy going out and like throwing colored stuff around? Why do they do it? So they're celebrating the end of winter, the triumph of good over evil, right? So there's a parable behind it, a Hindu parable behind it that is about a god and this and that, and then it ends up being the triumph of good over evil. And so it became to be about spring being sort of a renewing, rejuvenation, right? Oh, and then, yep, Nina put a really good, Melinda attended it. How nice. So do you see how there's products of it, there's practices. So, it'd be very easy for us to teach kids about those two, but it's really good for them to know what the why is behind it. And so you can do this with anything on earth. You could do it with a Christmas tree. There's products, there's practices, but there's perspectives behind it. You can do it with business cards in Japan. There's the business card, there's how we give each other business cards, but why do we do it? Because we need to know what level each person is at so that we talk to them with the appropriate politeness level, because politeness matters in Japan, right? Or, many holidays we do because age matters and coming of age matters, or there's religious reasons, right? So we're not talking about spending hours talking to kids about those perspectives. So I'm happy to answer that question you had. I think it was Maria. The other thing you need to think about is, how did we learn perspectives when we were growing up? So to me, we as children, we participate in lots of products and practices as we're growing up before we know what the perspectives are, and that's okay. So if you have a middle school twice a week, to me, now maybe people will say I'm wrong, but to me, it's really important to start getting in the products and practices with those kids and actually doing it versus just talking about it, like actually doing some of these things so they feel it the way a child would feel it in the culture you're studying, right? And then eventually, as those kids move on with their language learning, now, when a high school level 2 teacher or level 3 teacher starts to actually talk to them about it in the target language, what the perspective is behind it, then the kids are like, oh, wait, I got it. That's why we did that. And they have that deep understanding of the practice, especially, right? And then then all the pieces come together. So I'm going to give you a quick example of religion. So when I was little, I used to go to church. And I literally thought that I knew you're supposed to like hold your hands like this. And I thought that if I squeezed my hands really hard, that would make my prayer better. And I had no idea why we were doing it, what it was about, what was God, none of it. I remember just thinking like, I don't know what this is, but I guess I'll squeeze my hands really hard. So when children, or, Christmas, we have the kids participate in all these things, but they don't really know like what we're celebrating, why we're celebrating it, right? So everything, you could do anything like that, why anything you could take. Even I had a teacher once who I worked with, who she took all the Native American tribes that her students were studying and had them think about the products, practices, and perspectives of each tribe. So you can really apply this. So what you're basically doing is teaching kids how to understand cultures. So if they go to Any other country, if they go to Albania tomorrow and notice that in Albania, when someone visits, you bring out a tray of drinks, that's the product, and you go to the older person first to serve it, that's because age matters in Albania and older people are respected in Albania, right? So it's really a beautiful way to think about culture. In addition, once you're working with those things, your beautiful standards also bring in comparisons, right? So the ability to compare the products and practices at the middle school level, maybe, and the perspectives as they get older, right, of some festival of the culture you're studying to something we do, something you can absolutely say we do. And then what are the similarities? Right? So this all pulls through to things that kids will really be engaged with. In addition, your standards have these notions of input, output, and input or output that really help ground us in how students learn languages. It's not just input, it's not just output, it's opportunities to practice both and get good at both. And your standards and your New York State checkpoints also drive home this idea of proficiency, which is something that interestingly we've had for 60 years, right? With this triangle on the back, on the right, but we didn't really apply it to K through 12 thinking until we started talking about can-do statements, or we might remember lingua folio in the South, right? When we started thinking about proficiency as a way to guide instruction in the lower grades, K through 12. This was always an adult way of thinking. And this also has the potential to change the way we think about language instruction. And our learning materials are changing, right? So now, I can remember trying to find, going to Japan and taking millions of pictures because I knew I was the one who had to provide the pictures for my instruction. Now it's faster for me to Google a picture than it is for me to try to find a picture in Japan. The only time I do is when I want to show the kids me in Japan, right? So there's Google, there's YouTube, there's TikTok, there's all these learning materials the kids have to use and have to be able to see in order to motivate them, because just a textbook is not going to do it anymore. If you say open to page 5, they're all like, nah, right? We don't use textbooks in New Haven anymore. It just wasn't motivating the kids. And there's all kinds of beautiful resources like this one where you can use to talk to kids about comparing what their family eats to others, what different families from around the world eat, etc. And there's infographics and novels, beautiful novels meant for language learners, meant for heritage speakers, native speakers, not necessarily written for language learners. But we've gotten these beautiful novels, like these Q&S books are great. But they're meant to be read by Spanish speakers, for example. There's wonderful online things like that Manier Musical for French, and there's also one for Spanish, etc. So there's so many ways we can give students learning materials. And we can motivate students with thematic units that are much more interesting to them. So taking your thematic unit ideas from your new standards and building beautiful units around how do I talk to my family members? How do I address global warming? How do I address different sustainable development goals? How do I answer world questions? How do I promote equality and the issues I care about? How do I speak to someone else in a way? How do I represent myself the way I want on social media? How do I travel? How do I understand, I have a whole unit I absolutely love on the movie Totoro, which is a Japanese movie, my favorite. And I know it sounds silly, but even the high school kids loved it. And it incorporated about 5 of these themes here, if you go through it slowly. So I don't think that your New York State standards are saying that you do a house and home unit. I think what they're saying is these are the themes you cover, but these are the ways, use engagement, use real world problems to pull different ones of these together. And if you come to my session, second period, I'll show you what we're doing in New Haven with that. And just like Jill said, you've got your ACTFL high leverage teaching practices and all the other resources from ACTFL 5 C's, building proficiency, facilitating target language use. I would add visuals, 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 These are all ways we need to teach students now, incorporating those, I write them a little bit more simply, but incorporating those high leverage teaching practices. And so you've got all kinds of resources from AFL, that beautiful book that you've got a book study coming with. Other books I would recommend to you is this is my favorite book right now by Zaretta Hammond, this Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. Really helps with the students, us to direct instruction toward the students we teach, helping them to connect with others in the community. And she even says culture guides how we process information. So we have to think about our students' culture. And in addition, the brain is telling us it wants novelty, relevance, emotion, and a cultural lens. So things like music, movement, social interaction, story. Again, we see this idea of story, call and response. A lot of our students are used to that in their churches. So let's use that in our classrooms. Repetition, but repetition in fun ways, not repetition in boring ways, right? Like we used to do drill and kill. So now if we were to take our old elephant, right, and flip to our new elephant, right? How are we going to care for these babies that are coming up? What are some of the things that you wrote on your new elephant? Let me just look at the chat quick, see what we've got. I'm sorry, I can't, keep it all. Encanto. Oh, Miyazaki. Yes. Encanto. Oh, thank you, Norma. All right. Brene Brown. Yes. So some of the things I wrote on my elephant, I now have put his legs. Now, instead of those 4 skills, I've got the 3 modes of communication: interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational. I put his front leg now as the 3 Ps of the culture triangle, which I think I wanted that to be this big front leg. It was important to me that it was this big front leg driving it, because this is also the source of a lot of beautiful units too, right? I have a gorgeous like New Year's in Japan unit where we learn all about it and compare it to their New Year's in the students' homes and things like that. Cultural comparisons, right, should also be driving a lot of it. And then what else did you put for these things? Can you put it in the chat so I can see some of the things that you wrote? La, 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 la. 5 C's on the head. Oh, you're right. I didn't put the 5 C's on the head. Just said, yeah, I should have asked you. Kids are fascinated about culture. Yes, yes. Yes, and I see, if we have a second, I see struggle in the chat around logistical things that I'd love to talk to you about in a sec. Love it. Okay, great. So I'm going to show you some of the things that I added. I added proficiency as my big body of the elephant, the SBGs as the things that I'm keeping in my mind to try to be developing for the students, engaging themes, proficiency-based, wait a minute, something didn't show up, there we go. For assessment, real-world tasks, proficiency-based assessments, and then for motivating students, really it's purpose, justice, and real-world stuff. Whether it be, sometimes it's just a real-world situation, like we did a role play at a convenience store, like that's fine. But also sometimes it's real world, like how am I gonna tell Japanese people that I care about Black Lives Matter? Things like that. And you don't need high level language, right? So we have our level 1 students talking about like, we use a sentence frame, I care about blank, or I think blank is important. And they just choose whatever they want to put in the blank. So it doesn't take high level language to express those things. Authentic materials, right, are the trunk of how we're keeping kids engaged now. And I would encourage us, even though we've got this new elephant to think about, it's so hard. It's so hard. So that's why I wanted to give you this. Like, I used to do this thing where I would get in these ruts of what activities I was doing with the kids. So like I would find this game that was my favorite game and then we'd play it for like 2 weeks. And then I'd be like, oh, wait, I forgot about that other game. I encourage you to not be the blind men and to put this on your wall and think like, okay, I've been doing a lot of interpretive now. Have I been doing interpersonal? Or I've been doing a lot of, real world tasks, but have I done anything with like maybe a justice focus lately? things like that. So let's, as a field, move forward, seeing the whole elephant. And so here now is my actual resource handout where I have all the books I referenced. I have the SBGs there. I have all kinds of things for you to look at. And that's another one of my grandmother's elephants. And I wish you the happiest of summers. You deserve it after this year. This was a tough one too. And I just wanted to take a second to address like your logistical things I'm seeing in the chat. As a supervisor, I struggle with this so much because I love my teachers and I care about my teachers, and I know Jill's the same and Candy's the same, and seeing how hard you're working. And I know that in schools, it's often the logistical day-to-day things that make our jobs so hard, you know, like the projector's not working, or you're being asked to test someone, or you're being asked to cover a class, or whatever it might be. And the only advice I can offer you is to keep going back to that reason that you got involved with language teaching to begin with, and to also go back to that, just to that, taking the opportunity to just be present for the kids, because no matter where we are, there might be some opportunity to develop our relationships with the kids, because sometimes when I'm asked to cover, I'm asked to cover schools and be like substitute principal, even though I had a million other things on my docket that day. And I say, well, this is a time for me to go in and like be in the cafeteria doing lunch duty and actually have nice conversations with kids and remember why I'm here. So I know that your job is hard and that those things are really, really the most annoying, especially when you've done beautiful lesson planning and you're ready to roll. But every day brings an opportunity to bring some joy to a kid. And I think that's ultimately at our core why a lot of us, why we're here, right? So thank you so much. And I hope to see some of you at the second session.
Arigato, otsukaresama deshita. Thank you, Jessica. Yes. So
the link isn't allowing you to access it.
Yeah, I think you might need to change it to everyone.
Let me change it.
And I'm going to share my screen.
Hold on. I'll go to my other thing and change it for you. And
I'll share my screen. We just have very quick housekeeping
right now.
Yep. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. That was amazing. So we already see so many of your ideas on the Padlet. So thank you for that. The Padlet is linked in the program for today, as well as the links for what's coming next. So again, we put this together very quickly, and we're so glad over 350 of you are here. So what we have next, we're going to quickly hear from Candy and Marisol, and then you'll have a quick bio break, and then please log back on. We have two options for you during session 1. From 10 to 11 a.m., we're going to hear from Dr. Joanne O'Toole, authentic resources, right? One of our core practices, guiding learners through those. To Jessica's point, you may already have a curriculum, you may already have a textbook, right? How do we use authentic resources to make them more relevant and engaging for our 21st century students, right? And then we also can hear from Maureen Owens, who's been involved with the virtual lab classrooms with Marisol. She's going to really talk about target language use from level 1. So those are your two options. And then you have two options for session 2. Please do log on a few minutes before to make sure so that our presenters do have an hour for that. They have planned for you. And in the program, you also see all these amazing colleagues who planned for you to be in person today. So we're going to thank them, and you'll hear from them in the future. So I will stop sharing. Candy wanted to say something, and Marisol, and then we'll give you a bio break.
Very quickly, thank you everyone for registering. I only have one person on the participant list that has a phone number. Keep in mind, we cannot issue a certificate of any kind for a phone number. So if you are that person, please email me at candace.black@nysed.gov with your name. Everyone else who has their name as their ID number is fine. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And before finishing, I just want to say that today is Jill's birthday. So everybody, please put something in the chat. I know that we cannot all sing together and it will be kind, but thank you. Super happy birthday, Jill. Feliz cumpleaños, cumpleaños feliz. And that's from my part, and see you later in the session. Thank you, Jill.
Arigato, ne. Thank you. It's very nice to be with all of you. here. So thank you. So we're going to stay on and then this chat, if you have any questions, but the program link is there for you as well. So see you at 10 a.m. in those different Zooms. Thank you.
お誕生日おめでとうございます。Jill 先生。
ありがとうございます。またいつか会いましょうね。
はい